everybody, I am Jared Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to Latinos Take a DNA Test by Paralike. This is a channel that I have done a reaction to. I think they have a whole nother video that I didn't react to yet, so I'm probably going to have that on the list. But if I remember correctly, Paralike is kind of like a BuzzFeed type of channel, just geared more towards people in Latin America. In fact, I think it's actually part of the whole BuzzFeed family of channels. So I'm sure there's probably going to be like 3 or 4 different people that take the DNA test, which is always really cool because you get to see kind of a variety. And being that it's Latinos Take a DNA Test, we're going to see a good amount of variety. And that's mainly because most people with Latin American ancestry are dealing with a mixture of European ancestry, of African ancestry, and of Indigenous American ancestry. So you have this big mix, and then depending on where people are from within Latin America, that can kind of change the different percentages that you might expect. So certain areas, you might actually expect more of an African ancestry, or you may actually have certain areas, like I know I've heard in certain areas of Mexico, it's very common for a lot of people to actually have an Asian ancestry. But from what I understand, it's a very distinct sort of Asian migration that came over to Mexico. But that's all I'm going to say for now. But before we do jump into the video, please be sure to give this a like. That really does help me out. Also, be sure to subscribe and click that bell for notifications on future videos. With all that fun stuff said, let's jump into the video.
Today we're going to be taking a DNA test.
Finally, to find out
Puerto
if
Rico,
I'm 100%
Mexico.
Puerto Rican. I really hope that I get...
All right, right off the bat, it will only say Puerto Rican in the sense of your genetic communities. So when it looks at percentages, it's not going to give you a percentage of you're this much Puerto Rican. It's going to give you a percentage of you're this much type of European, this much type of African, this much type of Indigenous American. But it's not going to be like you're this percentage Puerto Rican. But depending on the test that they take, it can show genetic communities. So I think pretty much all the major tests now give genetic communities. I don't know if, yeah, I think all of them do. So looking at that genetic communities, that's really going to be able to tell you more specifically, because that's looking more at your genetic matches. So your close genetic matches and your extended genetic matches. So, you know, like 3rd, 5th cousins and closer, basically figuring out, okay, where are a lot of areas that your genetic matches say that they have ancestry. And if it notices, oh, wow, a huge percentage of this person's genetic matches have ancestry, not only in Puerto Rico, but in these specific areas of Puerto Rico, then it's going to say you have genetic community ties to that. And that's how that figures that out. So hopefully that's what they'll see, and they won't be like, oh no, I'm not Puerto Rican. And then, you know, because that I bet that's going to happen, is someone's going to be like, wait, I'm not Puerto Rican. Wait, I'm not Mexican. It's just unfortunately something that happens, especially the way that a lot of these tests are advertised. People really think of stuff more in modern day country borders than in historical like population groups, which is how we need to think of these tests to best understand them.
Full 100% Mexican, 100% Mexican. If I don't get 100% Mexican,
see?
I'm going to be sad.
I don't know a lot
Guarantee he's going to be sad. He's going to be one of the ones that's confused if that's how he's coming into it.
about my family past my grandparents, and I kind of like it that way. I feel like I know it's going to be Español, tío.
What if you find out you were like a queen in your ancestry?
I wouldn't be surprised.
You're not going to really be able to figure that out through DNA. If you do use the DNA for genealogy research and you trace it, yeah, you might find royal ancestry. But people aren't going to take a DNA test and it's going to be like, you're royalty.
I'm from the DR and Sri Lanka, so like there's some black in there, but my mom's last name is very white, so something weird probably happened there.
I hope that I'm Bad Bunny's cousin.
Imagine.
I want to know like how much like indigenous I have. That's like the main thing I want to know.
Oh my gosh, I'm 71.9% European. Hey! Spanish and Portuguese, 69.8.
Okay, Rosalia.
0.3%.
Now, I noticed Canary Islands, and I have dealt with a good amount of people with Puerto Rican ancestry's DNA tests. And Canary Islands is one of those ones that's very common, especially with Cabo Verde. Like, those are very, very common communities to get with people of Puerto Rican ancestry, at least in my experience. So kind of interesting to see that. I can't remember what he said his ancestry was. I want to say he said it was either Mexican or Puerto Rican, but I can't remember which one. But let's continue. This is a very interesting breakdown.
Percent Italian. No wonder I like pasta so much. Why is this like the most...
The food thing, everyone's always like, oh, I'm that. I must have been because I like this food.
Broadly so.
like white DNA
It's
test?
a very white DNA test.
Ashkenazi Jewish,
Jewish, everyone knows that
0.8, 3.2% Congolese, and Southern East African. Let's go to the Congos!
Oh, we're going to the Congos!
Hey, come on, let's go! Recent ancestry in the Americas, Caribbean. Ponce, Puerto Rico. Wow, Ponce.
So this is what I was talking about with the communities. It's giving these specific areas. That's the thing. Like, a lot of people expect it in their percentages, but really nowadays, because the tests have gotten so much better, they have these communities. 5 years ago, I can't remember if any of them really had communities. I think a few were maybe starting to roll them out. But these communities things has been something that's just been a bit more recent. And in the old days, when we did genealogy through this, you'd have to go through all your matches, hope that they had family trees, or you could build a family tree from what information they supplied, and then see where are the common locations that they have in their tree. Okay, go on to the next person, the next person, the next person. Eventually, after, 24 or so, you kind of start to figure out, like, oh yeah, I keep noticing this place or this place. And a lot of times what's really interesting, especially if you have a lot of good matches, you'll notice those specific, like, oh, it's not just Puerto Rico. I keep noticing all these people in Ponce, Puerto Rico. Ponce, Ponce, Ponce. So let's continue.
I got some blood in Ponce there. I'm honestly very surprised at the fact that I have more indigenous American blood than African blood.
Oh, I already saw a number I don't like.
Which one?
I have found it's a common theme in a lot of these videos where people have some sort of Latin ancestry and they're kind of surprised at that European, or at least at that high percentage of it. And I mean, it's, it's kind of expected, honestly. Depending on where you're from, some people may have much more European than others. So kind of that common theme, but yeah, let's see what he's got to say. It's a lot of Southern European, and I see that Spanish Portuguese. So this is basically representing Iberian ancestry. So Spanish Portuguese ancestry.
44% European.
Okay, I can see it. I was expecting more.
He's like offended by it.
East Asian Indigenous American.
Okay.
Okay. I got those native roots, very in touch. 1% Jewish. What's up? Where's Mexico?
There you go.
It's not going to be a percentage. Look in your communities. It's like I said, I knew it was going to happen.
It even tells you like what part of Mexico I'm from. That's wild. Nuevo León. Jalisco. Jalisco is known for like a little bit more white, a little bit like colored eyes, blonde hair. So that's super interesting. Chihuahua, you already know, baby. That's where I'm from. El Norte, El Paso, Texas. Shout out 915. 0.4% Italian. I think that's why I dress so well.
Honestly, the 0.4% of Italian is probably more of a misread of the Spanish Portuguese, because there is a lot of that genetic correlation between Italian and Iberian, and even kind of some of that French in there too. But it's really not that uncommon, where if you're going to get some Southern European, like Italian or Iberian, you may get a little percentage of the other. So I really, really doubt that 0.4% actually represents some actual Italian ancestor of his. I think that's probably more representative of just his Iberian ancestry. But there is that possibility. It doesn't mean that it's not possible. There is possibility. Just think of it as like a confidence slider. And my confidence in that 0.4% being actually Italian is really, 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 really low. I do not have much confidence in that. So a lot of times people misinterpret when I say things like this as like, oh, he's saying there's no way there's any Italian. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that my confidence that it actually represents Italian is super, 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 super low. And the lower the percentage, the lower, it'll be, especially when you have correlating ancestry that it's like, oh yeah, that commonly ties in with that other type of ancestry.
If you say so.
Oh my God, I'm not white. Like at all. Oh my God. I'm mostly Central and South Asian. Southern Asian, 45%. We knew that. Southern Indian and Sri Lankan, 45.5%.
Very interesting.
Shot. The other 36%.
I think this was something I learned in a previous video that I wasn't really aware of, was that there was a very large Indian migration to the Caribbean and to South America. I don't remember exactly where, but I remember first hearing about it and being kind of surprised. And then a lot of people commenting like, yeah, it was actually a common theme. And that's actually one of the things that I find most interesting about genealogy and stuff is there are all these little pockets of different populations that migrated from one place to another, and they have these really interesting stories. But the thing is that there's hundreds, if not thousands of them, especially, as you go further and further back into history. And so, when you're doing genealogy, as you're doing more and more trees, and especially for me reacting to all these different videos, it gets to a point where you start seeing and learning about all of these little different things that you really wouldn't have found otherwise. I specialize in a lot of things for like Sephardic Jews that almost everyone I talk to doesn't know anything about. Like most people have no idea that the Sephardic diaspora has 3 different main waves, technically 4. At the same time, it is kind of funny where, I will see these videos and I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. And people are like, how did you not know that? You're a genealogist. I'm skeptical that you're a professional if you didn't know that. Random rant out of the thin air. I don't even remember why I started saying that, but yeah, let's continue.
Is sub-Saharan African. Are we surprised? No. Oh no, European. 10%. That is an amount I can allow. So my mom is from the...
Okay. Let's go back. I want to see what... okay. So 10%, and then it's split up 4.9% Southern European, and then 4.7% Northwestern European, and then both of those are broken down more. When you look at the Southern European, it's mostly Spanish and Portuguese. The next one is just broadly Southern European. But I think, once again, this is probably more representing an Iberian ancestry, and it's just not easy to really decipher the differences, and so that's why you get these variations of percentages. All right, so let's continue watching.
That is an amount I can allow. So my mom is from the Dominican Republic. That didn't show up here at all. So where did they come from?
Well, that's because the people that make up the Dominican Republic are all people from all different parts of the world, and so it's not going to give you a Dominican Republic percentage. If anything, it'll give you that as a community. But they don't have all the communities all around the world defined yet. They have thousands of them on each one of these websites defined, but then you're actually talking about tens of thousands of different population groups and communities, and especially if you're trying to break this down by regions or counties or, the more finite you go, the more difficult it's going to be. And so they may not have gotten to that yet, at least when they took this test, which was actually just last week, apparently. So that's why that's not there. I'm curious to see if it comes up as a community for, but I'm guessing they're going to jump to the next person pretty soon.
As far as I know, my mom's family has been in the DR, but maybe not even as many generations as they think. I'm assuming the 40% African is the Dominican, and they ended up in the DR for less time than we thought.
All of it probably represents the Dominican Republic ancestry. I think, did she say it was just her mom or both parents? I feel like she said it was just her mom from the Dominican Republic. So I can't remember where she said her father was from, because it might have been somewhere else. But either way, whatever the 50%, like whatever she would mostly expect from her mom, and in all honesty, if her mom were to take a test, her mom's probably going to get a very similar breakdown. Actually, let's go back. What was her... Okay, so 50% Southern South Asian. So I guess the question, maybe I missed this, was her dad from the South Asian ancestry and her mom's from Dominican Republic? I can't... There's so much information trying to analyze, I can't always remember everything. So maybe that's it, is that it's 50% and 50%, because that's what it looks like here. So I'm guessing that if her mom were to take a test, her mom's probably going to get a big amount of African, a good amount of European, and then probably some of the Indigenous American, because I thought I saw that pop up somewhere. Yeah, so the Indigenous American, it's only 0.7%, but if her father is South Asian, like 100% South Asian, then that means that the European, the African, and this very small amount of Indigenous American is what represents the Dominican Republic ancestry.
That didn't show up here at all. So where did they come from? As far as I know, my mom's family has
her mom
been in the DR, but maybe not even as many generations as they think.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, her indigenous ancestry, assuming that's correct, then that's going to be the one ancestry of hers that has been there for a long, long, long time. But all the other ancestry, the European and the African, the best that could be is maybe late 15th century, basically, has to be post 1492, because that's when, anyone of European or African basically arrived. But more than likely, a big majority of her family probably arrived sometime in the 1500s, 1600s, maybe even 1700s. And it's even possible that some of her family didn't even arrive until the 1800s or maybe even the 1900s. But that's really what's going on here.
Oh my gosh!
I am 88.7% European.
As usual, mostly Spanish and Portuguese. Again, that 1.3% Ashkenazi Jewish. And what could be happening here is there could be a few things. I'm sure what most people are thinking of, and this is very possibly what it is representing, is that Sephardic ancestry. Basically, after the Inquisition and even before the Inquisition, there were a lot of Jews who were converting in Iberia because of the political pressures. And then once the Inquisition came in, it was basically either you convert or you leave. And so a lot of people converted. There were people that tried to stay Jewish and, pretended to be Catholic, and, there's that whole history. But basically what ended up happening was there was this mass conversion of Jews. And then after a while, because, they're going to have children with other Catholics, and eventually after a while, their DNA is going to mix more in. And basically that means that a lot of people with any sort of Iberian ancestry are often going to get some sort of percentage of Ashkenazi Jewish, just because it's so common for people of Iberian ancestry to have new Christian ancestors, basically Jews who converted and they were called new Christians. But at the same time, another possibility could be that maybe there's a more recent Jewish ancestry. So if it's what we first said, where it's that Sephardic new Christian ancestry, then that 1.1% is actually going to be a mixture of all of these very different distant ancestors that were living in maybe the 1400s or the 1300s, maybe the 1500s. Whereas if it's a more recent Jewish ancestor, 1.1% is more indicative of like a third, fourth, maybe a fifth great grandparent. And assuming that she's my age, a third great grandparent would be someone born about the early 1800s, maybe like 1825-ish. Fourth great grandparent's going to be more, 1775, 1800, and then fifth great grandparents, mid 1700s. So basically, if that 1.1% is coming from one recent common ancestor, and she wanted to figure out who's this Jewish ancestor that I might be getting it from, then you'd want to trace back to your third, fourth, or fifth great grandparents, and that's where you're probably going to find it. But that's only assuming it's coming from one ancestor, and like we said, it could be coming from a whole bunch of more distant ancestors, and you're really not going to be able to find that. But let's continue.
Spanish and Portuguese, I'm 85.4%.
And again, that broadly Southern European.
Interesting.
I'm gonna call my mom about this. Oh, and what's the first state in Mexico that pops up? Jalisco, Mexico. Viva Mexico! The comments are gonna be like, she's not even.
Are you even Latina at this point?
I am.
Rosalia's cousin.
I know, I called you Rosalia. Mira.
Please.
Okay, we report.
We don't want to kick you off from the team.
40.9% East Asian and Indigenous.
Yeah.
I wanted 70 or 80.
You're 4% less colonized than I am. Congratulations.
From Spanish.
And notice for hers, there's that broadly East Asian and Indigenous American, and focus on the fact that it's East Asian. And that's because East Asian and Indigenous American have a lot of genetic ties, obviously because of the migration from East Asia into the Americas. So there's that genetic commonality, and it makes it difficult for them to be able to decipher all these different segments as specifically East Asian or Indigenous, and they can't figure it out. So they have this more broad category.
Spanish and Portuguese, 27%.
Welcome to the team.
Northwestern European, British.
I can see that, the class, the elegance that you carry yourself with.
From Nicaragua, I have Managua.
Oh, go back. Oh,
The class, the elegance that you
I want to see that Western Asian.
From the-
So yeah, Western Asian and North African, 2.1%. I think that's fairly interesting with this. It could be representative of different things. It could be possibly part of that Sephardic ancestry because people with Sephardic ancestry sometimes get these different types of readings like this. Like, I can't remember what my 23andMe is, but I think I have some of these random stuff because of my Sephardic ancestry. So this is my breakdown, and you can see that I'm getting this Western Asian and North African 1.1%, and that's most likely indicative of my Sephardic ancestry. As well, that Southern European that I'm getting, the Italian and all that, that's probably part of my Sephardic ancestry, which makes sense because if I remember correctly, I think I'm supposed to get about 4 or 5% Sephardic ancestry based on what I know of my family tree. So 3.9% plus the 1.1%, that kind of adds up to what I would expect. And then that Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry is probably indicative of all of my other ancestry, that Ashkenazi. So I'm just kind of using this as an example of what she's getting might be indicative of that Sephardic ancestry. It might be indicative of something else, but it's just something to kind of think about. And that's one of the things with these tests is you never know 100% for sure what it could be indicating because it's not like they've tested everybody in the world. They only have pockets of different populations that they've been able to test. And so it's trying to figure out all this stuff without knowing it exactly. So if anyone is familiar with the poem about the 3 blind men describing the elephant, it's very similar to that. Each blind man is at a different part of the elephant, and one's feeling the trunk, and he's describing what the elephant is like. One's at the legs, and he's describing what the elephant's like. The other one's at the ears, and he's describing what the elephant's like. All of them are right, but all of them only have bits of information, and because they're missing the other bits of information, they only can figure out so much. So they're all right, but they hear the others, and it's like, but that doesn't sound right. So it's kind of like that sort of thing here. I hope that makes sense.
Nicaragua, I have Managua. What? I'm from Chinandega, which is number 3.
Mine too.
Okay.
Mine was a third.
Okay. We had an ancestor from Lebanon. I don't see Lebanon here, so somebody like.
But there was that West Asian. All right.
Unfortunately, I did not discover that I'm Princess Diana's long-lost relative.
Unfortunately not.
Or a long-lost royal.
What surprised you the most?
She does her family tree. She might be able to find some royal ancestry. It's just going to take some work. Pretty much everyone has it. It's just a matter of being able to actually find it.
The 44% European.
Oh my gosh.
Like, no offense to the Europeans, to my vanilla friends out there, I love all of you.
I was worried I was going to have 90 siblings, like that documentary that I watched last week. So at least
that documentary on Netflix was really, really interesting. I can't remember what it's called. Comment below if you know what I'm talking about, but it's basically about some sperm donor doctor that used his sperm to for the donations.
didn't happen.
Like, I'm 1% Jewish.
1% Jewish. I don't think you can claim that.
Oh, come on. I mean, you just...
I always find that interesting, you can't claim Jewish or whatever. I think there's the way to think of it is you can have Jewish ancestry without calling yourself Jewish. It's just like you have a Jewish ancestor, so then, you have Jewish ancestry, but doesn't necessarily make you Jewish culturally.
Saying you're Mexican and I'm Puerto Rican. And
And
that's
that's
it.
that.
Don't think about it too much.
All right, I mean, that was a decent video, kind of what I expect from these BuzzFeed type of channels. Not, too in-depth of thought of stuff, but kind of a little bit. I know when I watched the BuzzFeed Oz one recently, I kind of liked that because it actually gave some good information beyond just the DNA test. They had someone there that was like, well, here's some stuff on your family tree, and, it kind of gave a little bit more. But I think they all had very, very interesting breakdowns, like I expected in the beginning. A lot of mixture of European, Indigenous American, African. And as always, I would really have been interested to see them go into the genetic matches, especially to find out, people from different places, how many genetic matches might they get? This was a topic that came up in a recent video, and I even asked a poll about it where I got a lot of really interesting answers about this. But it'd be interesting to see, does someone from Mexico have a lot more matches on 23andMe than someone from Puerto Rico? And, do any of them have a whole lot of way closer matches than the others? Or do some of them have a very small amount and it's all very distant? And using that, it kind of gives an idea of, if someone's from Mexico, maybe it is a better idea to go on 23andMe because there's a lot of people with Mexican ancestry on 23andMe, but maybe someone with Puerto Rican ancestry tests on there and it's like, oh, there's not as much there. I'm not saying that's the case, just kind of using that as a possible example, but that's one of the interesting things I would love to see from videos like this. I know it's really difficult when it comes to that kind of stuff because people are worried, I don't want to show these names of my matches and stuff. you can edit it out and still show some of that interesting stuff, I think. But if you'd like to see more about the number of genetic matches that people might expect, be sure to check out this previous video I did right here. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. That really does help me out. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe, and it's completely free to do so. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @GenieVlogger. I'm the Genie Vlogger. See you in my next video.